The rain lashed against the window pane of the upscale bistro, a rhythmic gray accompaniment to the symphony of clinking silverware and low, cultured laughter. From my usual corner table, I watched the door, a familiar flutter in my stomach. Leo was late, again. But the flutter wasn't anxiety, it was the old, stubborn hope that maybe tonight his eyes would hold that elusive something I'd been chasing for 6 months. When he finally swept in, shaking droplets from his perfect dark hair, the room seemed to tilt. He had that effect, a gravitational pull of effortless charm. He slid into the seat opposite me, his smile a practiced, dazzling thing. "Sorry, love. Last-minute client crisis," he said, reaching for my hand. His fingers were cool. "You look stunning." "Thank you," I replied, my voice softer than I intended. Ilara, the usually articulate museum archivist, reduced to a whisper around Leo Vance, the rising star of venture capital. Our relationship was a study in contrasts, my quiet world of preserved history, his loud one of forging the future. I'd always thought it was a beautiful balance. The dinner proceeded as our dinners always did. He spoke of deals and golf courses and the new Porsche he was eyeing. I spoke of a newly acquired 18th century diary, my passion for the faded ink, making his gaze subtly glaze over before he caught himself, patting my hand. "Fascinating, darling," he'd say, and I'd choose to believe him. It was as we were sharing a dessert, a chocolate torte he insisted on, though I'd mentioned wanting the lemon tart, that his phone buzzed on the white tablecloth. He glanced at it, and a smirk, quick and unfamiliar, touched his lips before he could school his features. He flipped it over. "Just Jasper being an idiot," he said, naming his best friend and business partner. "Anything fun?" I asked, trying to enter his world. "Just old jokes." He took a sip of his wine, his eyes avoiding mine. A cold, thin thread of suspicion, one I'd been diligently ignoring, began to tighten in my chest. Later, back at his minimalist, cold apartment, all concrete and steel, so unlike my cozy, book-cluttered cottage, he was in the shower. His laptop, a sleek silver beast, sat open on the glass desk. He'd never been secretive with his passwords. He knew I had no interest in his spreadsheets, but that smirk haunted me. The thread pulled me across the room. I typed in the password I'd seen him use 100 times. His desktop was a chaos of folders. My heart hammered against my ribs, a traitorous drum. But I had to know. I found it not in a hidden file, but in a chat log pinned to his taskbar. A group chat titled, "The Wager, Jasper. 1 week to go, Leo. The finish line is in sight. The bet stands, 6 months with the human cardigan without cracking. Can you close the deal? Leo, please, it's in the bag. She's so desperate for affection she'd believe me if I said I wanted to elope to a library. The 50K is as good as mine. Marcus, don't get soft on us now. Remember the terms. Public declaration at the gala, then you can dump her. I found the love of my life, in the fiction section. Classic. Leo, soft? I'm counting the days. Her earnest little speeches about porcelain restoration are a special kind of torture. July 12th, gentlemen, watch me perform." The words didn't just sting, they eviscerated. They dissolved the marrow in my bones. Human cardigan, a bet, $50,000, my love, my vulnerability, my whispered hopes in the dark, all reduced to a line item in a sociopathic game. The 6-month anniversary he'd been so insistently planning, the black and white gala. It wasn't a celebration, it was the scheduled venue for my public slaughter. I heard the shower turn off. Numbly, mechanically, I closed the laptop and walked to the living room. I stood by the vast window, watching the city lights blur through a film of tears I refused to shed. He emerged, towel around his waist, hair damp. "Everything okay, Ilara? You look pale." I turned. I saw him now. Truly saw him. The perfect symmetry of his face was a mask. The warmth in his eyes was a calculated simulation. I was looking at a stranger who had mapped my insecurities and exploited them for sport. "Just a headache," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I think I'll head home early." He looked surprised, then faintly annoyed. "Sure, get some rest. Big week coming up." He said it with a wink that now made my skin crawl. Oh yes, I thought. The numbness giving way to a glacial, crystalline fury. A very big week indeed. The following days were an exercise in surreal performance art. I became the actress of my own life. I smiled at Leo's calls. I listened to his vapid plans for the gala where he'd have a special surprise for me. I even feigned excitement, suggesting we dance to our song, a bland pop tune he'd once claimed to like. Inside, I was a war room. Humiliation was the initial, overwhelming wave. It crashed over me in public places, a sudden heat in my cheeks at the grocery store, a feeling of nakedness on the subway. I had been a laughingstock, not just to Leo, but to his entire circle. The private, quiet girl who loved old things had been the perfect, pathetic target. But humiliation, I decided, was a fuel. It burned clean and hot, forging a new resolve. Revenge. Not a messy, screaming revenge, not a violent one. A revenge of cold, precise, public truth. A revenge that would mirror his own crime. A meticulously planned unveiling. I used my skills as an archivist. I began to collect evidence. Not of the bet, that was just one screenshot, easily denied. I collected him. I recorded our conversations, legal in my state with one-party consent. His dismissive comments about my work, his condescending there pats when I spoke of my late mother, his careful, empty promises. I compiled a dossier of emotional fraud. I also researched. Jasper's wife Lila was a well-known philanthropist. Marcus was desperate for a board seat at a prestigious arts foundation. Leo himself was cultivating an image as a cultured patron, hence his famed interest in my world. The plan formed with chilling clarity. The gala was their stage. It would become mine. July 12th arrived. Leo picked me up in his new Porsche, his smile blinding. I wore a simple, elegant black gown. My armor. My hair was swept up. My makeup flawless. I was an exhibit, ready for presentation. "Ready for your big night, darling?" he asked, squeezing my knee. "More than you can possibly imagine," I smiled, letting my eyes sparkle with what he would mistake for adoration. The gala was a sea of tuxedos and sequins. Leo was in his element, glad-handing, laughing too loud. He introduced me as my lovely Alara, who works with dusty books, always with that faint, patronizing edge. I played my part, smiling demurely, clinging to his arm. Then it was time for the speeches. The charity auction concluded, and the host, a friend of Jasper's, took the microphone. And now, a gentleman who needs no introduction, a man who's not only a force in business, but as I understand, recently in matters of the heart. Leo Vance. Polite applause. Leo swaggered to the stage, accepting the microphone with a theatrical flourish. He beamed at me, standing alone in the crowd. "Thank you, everyone. You all look wonderful tonight." He cleared his throat, adopting a sincere expression. 6 months ago, my life changed. I met someone who showed me there's more to life than balance sheets and quarterly reports. Someone gentle, kind, with a soul full of beautiful, quiet history. He was good. The cadence was perfect. My stomach churned. She taught me that the most precious things aren't always the shiniest or the newest. His eyes found mine, brimming with fake emotion. So tonight, in front of all our friends, I want to say, Alara, you are the love of my life. The crowd sighed, a collective awe. People turned to look at me, expecting tears, a hand over my mouth, a run into his arms. This was his moment, the culmination of the bet. Jasper and Marcus were grinning near the bar, ready to toast his victory. Leo extended a hand toward me, beckoning. "Come here, my love." The room fell silent, waiting. Every eye was on me. This was the precipice. I didn't move. I simply walked, slowly and deliberately, not toward Leo on the stage, but toward the small, secondary podium used by the auctioneer. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Leo's confident smile faltered. I reached the podium, tapped the microphone. It was live. The sound system hummed. "Thank you, Leo," I said, my voice clear, calm, and carrying to every corner of the ballroom. "That was a beautiful speech. Very well rehearsed." The murmur grew. Leo's face went pale. "Alara, sweetheart, what are you doing?" he said, his microphone still on, his voice now strained. "I'm accepting your declaration," I said, smiling. "And I'd like to reciprocate with a declaration of my own. A story, if you will. An archival record of the last 6 months. You should let me talk to my property guy. Your mother's locket? It's quaint. But you shouldn't live in the past, darling. Each clip was a bullet. The crowd's discomfort was palpable. Shocked glances shot from me to Leo to his friends. I saw Lila, Jasper's wife, staring at her husband with dawning, furious comprehension. Then I displayed the crown jewel, the screenshot of the wager chat magnified for all to see. The phrase human cardigan hung in the air, a monument to cruelty. The bet amount $50,000 glowed. The date, July 12th. Tonight. The room erupted in gasps and low curses. Leo was stammering into his microphone. It's a fake. It's out of context. She's crazy. The context, I said, overriding him, my voice still terrifyingly steady, is a conspiracy to inflict emotional harm for financial gain and private amusement. You sought out someone you perceived as weak, Leo. You weaponized affection. You curated a performance, and tonight was your finale. I looked away from him, scanning the crowd. I found Marcus, who looked ready to vomit. Mr. Thorne, your bid for the Arts Foundation board is, I understand, pending. I've taken the liberty of forwarding this archival evidence to the selection committee. Patronage should require basic humanity. My gaze landed on Leela. Mrs. Reed, your charity work is admirable. You might wish to review the source of some of your husband's recent contributions. Finally, I looked back at Leo. He was a shattered mannequin on the stage, all his polish gone, leaving raw panic. You won your bet, Leo, I said quietly, the microphone catching every word. You lasted 6 months. You proved you could mimic love for a price. But the real cost is yours to bear now. You didn't just lose $50,000 tonight. You've lost your reputation, your credibility, and the trust of everyone here. You are exposed. And in my world, preservation is everything. This record is permanent. I switched off the microphone. The silence was absolute, deafening. Then it was broken by the sound of Lila slapping Jasper across the face, a sharp, satisfying crack. A board member was already on his phone, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. Leo simply stood on the stage, hollowed out, as the crowd's scornful whispers rose around him like a tide. I stepped down from the podium, my legs trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. I didn't look back. I walked through the parted crowd, head high, the black gown my banner of survival. The fallout was swift and brutal. Leo's firm dropped him. The story, complete with the damning screenshot, was the talk of the city. Not in the society pages, but in the business and philanthropy sections. Jasper's marriage publicly imploded. Marcus's board bid was dead. The wager trio became pariahs. My revenge was complete. It was public, it was precise, and it was devastating. I should have felt triumphant. I expected to feel a clean, cold satisfaction. But in the quiet of my cottage, surrounded by my beloved, silent books and the comforting smell of old paper, I felt empty. The glacial fury had melted, leaving a vast, arid plain. I had focused so single-mindedly on the unveiling that I hadn't prepared for the aftermath, for the sheer lonely wreckage of having been so profoundly, intentionally deceived. A week after the gala, a courier delivered a letter. Leo's handwriting, usually so flamboyant, was shaky. Ilara, I have no right to write this. No excuse. I can only offer the truth, which you have forced me to see. The bet was real. It started as a stupid, cruel joke. Jasper dared me. I saw you in that cafe, so engrossed in a book, so separate from our world. You seemed like the ultimate challenge. But something happened. Your quiet wasn't emptiness, it was depth. Your kindness wasn't weakness, it was strength. The jokes in the group chat became a way for me to distance myself from what I was starting to feel, because feeling it meant I'd lost. Not just the money, but my own twisted game. I was trapped in the narrative I'd created. When you stood at that podium, you were magnificent. You were everything I was pretending to be. Strong, clever, formidable. You humiliated me. Yes, the man you exposed wasn't just a fiction for you. It was a fiction I'd been living for years. I am so desperately, unbearably sorry. Not for the consequences, but for the pain. For not being brave enough to call off the bet and tell you the truth myself. that I had, against all my own intentions, fallen in love with you. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve a reply. I just needed you to know that the most real thing in my life was the lie I was paid to tell, and the only genuine thing I ever felt was for you, the person I was supposed to be pretending to love. Leo. I read it once, then again. The anger didn't flare. The humiliation didn't resurface. Instead, a profound, weary sadness settled over me. The ultimate twist: the performer had lost himself in the role. His confession changed nothing. It couldn't rebuild trust from atomized dust. It couldn't undo the calculated cruelty of those 6 months. The foundation was poison, no matter what grew in it later. But it did something unexpected. It humanized the monster. It complicated my clean narrative of villain and victim. And in that complication, my own emotional turn began. I didn't reply to Leo, but I didn't burn the letter. I filed it away, a curious artifact in my own personal archive. It marked the end of one story and the ambiguous beginning of another. Not a story of reconciliation, but of my own recovery. The public humiliation was his. The private revenge was mine. But the unexpected emotional turn was this. In dismantling his lie with such cold precision, I had rediscovered my own formidable truth. I was not a human cardigan. I was a curator, a preserver, and when necessary, a warrior. The love he claimed to have found might have been real for him in the end, but it was irrelevant. My task now was not to heal from him, but to reclaim the narrative of my own heart, not as a site of betrayal, but as a library, a little weathered perhaps, but still standing, full of stories yet to be written, waiting for a reader who wouldn't just appreciate the cover, but would genuinely cherish the text within.